Hello, everyone. This is Adam Ozdemir from the Peace Silence Institute, the executive director of the institute. I would like to welcome you for Beyond the Books program, which is a new initiative, a new program. It's an online book discussion program. We are just initiating. This is the first program that we are going to host today with our guest speaker, author, friend, Craig Considine. And we have another friend who is going to be moderating the event, Hakan Yeşilova from the Fountain Magazine. He's the chief editor of the magazine. Well, after a while, at, I think it was last event in the beginning of Ramadan, we had this virtual event, and we went back to our normal at the last few days of the Ramadan with in-person events. And we are hoping to continue those in-person events in the near future. And hopefully, we are going to go back to all normal for the next season. Beyond the Books is a new initiative, as I mentioned, is a new program to intend to provide such a platform for virtual interaction between the author and the audience through the Q&A discussions that will happen over the live streaming. This event will open up a platform for us to talk and learn more about the book and the author. I hope we will all benefit out of this program on the new book, on Craig's new book, The Humanity of Muhammad, Christian View. Now I will leave to Hakan. Hakan, if you would introduce yourself and the speaker, and I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. It's great to be with you and Craig. Peace Silence Institute has been organizing really amazing events since its inception. I don't know how many years ago, maybe 15 years ago, right? I believe interfaith dialogue got a new meaning with the initiatives of Peace Silence. So I'm very grateful to you and to your colleagues. I'm Hakan. I'm with the Fountain Magazine. I'm editing it with my colleagues here in New Jersey. It's a bi-monthly magazine publication with a lot of other publications alongside the Tugra Books and the Blue Dome Press, which is actually the publisher of this beautiful book, The Humanity of Muhammad. I'm very honored to have met Dr. Craig Considine a couple of years back. And he probably doesn't know, but we have an interesting encounter over the email. Once I was checking out my social media account and I saw Craig again posting a very, very beautiful post about Prophet Muhammad, but not only him, but more about the interfaith community and how the members of this community, we could build a better society. And then I said, so much so that my colleagues in my office could hear how lovely it would be to publish a book by Dr. Considine, for his message is so beautiful and so much alongside our message. And then next door, you both know my office, and Ahmed next door said, "Did you say Craig Considine?" And he realized actually there was an email in his spam box that came from him a couple days back, right? And it was about this possibility of the publication of this book. So, it was, this is why I actually resemble it to a prayer, to a saying of Prophet Muhammad when he said, I'm the prayer of Prophet Abraham, and I'm the good news that Jesus gave. So for that matter, Craig was a prayer that came true when we were speaking about him. We just realized he had already contacted us. So Craig Considine is a professor of sociology. Let me give a brief introduction of him. at Rice University in Houston, Texas. He's the author of many books and articles, including The Dialogue of Civilizations, Muhammad's Interactions with Christians, Islam in America, Exploring the Issues, Muslims in America, Examining the Facts, Islam, Race, and Pluralism in the Pakistani Diaspora, all published by very prestigious publishing houses like Routledge, Hearst, and another one is coming out this summer, probably in October, as it is listed so in Amazon. People of the Book, Prophet Muhammad's Encounters with Christians, and this will be by Hearst, which is the Oxford University Press in the United States. So while I would like to congratulate him for this good effort, and hopefully really looking forward to all of these publications. And let me start off right away by asking him why humanity of Muhammad, nothing else, not another thing.
Well, first, Hakan, it's always a pleasure to see you and be with you. And Adam, thank you so much for inviting me. Peace Islands, thank you so much. The stars were aligned, I think, Hakan, with the book. And it's been such a beautiful, unprecedented journey that has really introduced me to so many amazing people. So I want to thank you. Now, with humanity, right? Why humanity? I think there's two reasons primarily. The first is when I engage with the literature on Prophet Muhammad's life and legacy, humanity sticks out to me. So this is a kind of common theme that I see in the scholarship, that I see in the literature. And in addition to this, the second element is that I think humanity is facing a very severe test at the moment. And this isn't just in light of, Christian-Muslim relations, talking humanity at large, things like the Pope Francis refers to it as the kind of throwaway culture. The idea that human beings don't care about refugees, these boats getting onto into the Mediterranean Sea, and hundreds of people just dying at once, refugees. And Pope Francis is saying, he also refers to it as the culture of indifference, that we don't care about each other anymore. Fundamentally, as humans, that we're so caught up in our own worlds, but we're also kind of obsessed with categories, and we only view people as white or black or brown or Muslim or Christian or Jewish or whatever it might be. So there's a need for Prophet Muhammad's message of humanity, because humanity is facing a severe test. And for me, as a Catholic, I don't need merely Jesus to bring me the message of humanity. I know he brings the message of humanity, but when I see it in other historical figures or even modern figures, and when I see this message of humanity aligning with my own core values and principles, it's something that I become passionate about, and it's something that I want to share. And that's really ultimately what the book is about. It's not merely about my views on Muhammad, it's my views on humanity too.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a very important point to consider. But also, we're living in a time where religion is not the most fashionable thing. We are seeing people, especially in this time of COVID. Hopefully, we're all getting through it. And I know it's been a year for you where the Considine family gave birth to two children. Let me put it that way. One that was this book, a bestseller in this category, actually, and Clara, the beautiful daughter. So it's been a hopefully very blissful year for you. But many people have questioned why such things are happening to the world. Is God not intervening? Why is he sending down these tribulations to us? So many people, while some religious people have approached their faith even more. Many others have distanced themselves even more. So we saw arguments like, all right, it's a time when you don't really ask the imam or the priest about finding a solution to COVID, but you go to the science, you go to the scientists and labs. They don't ask it from God, they just work it through it in their labs. So how do you think Prophet Muhammad's message, peace be upon him, can have an influence on a world where people are questioning their religiosity?
That's a very good question. And it actually reminds me of an article that I wrote for Newsweek, the American publication. And I think this article came out in March of 2020, right as the pandemic was really making its presence felt. And undoubtedly, right, Muhammad is a spiritual figure. He's a religious figure. He is connecting human beings to something that is unseen, that's something that is transcendental. And this becomes very philosophical when you operate in these realms, right? And the article also touched upon Muhammad's rational side, the side of thinking things through in a manner that is linked to common sense. So he's not merely saying, yes, like connect yourself with your higher being. Fundamentally, he would always encourage you to do that. But he was also giving very sound advice on how to operate on a day-to-day basis, given the various challenges that are posed to humanity. And in the article, I focused on several things, and this is largely coming from the Hadith collection. And Muhammad is saying things like, if there is a plague in a land and you're in the land in which there's a plague, don't leave, don't let anyone come in, essentially a quarantine. He was offering this advice. We also have numerous hadith that generally speaks about cleanliness, washing hands, and just being not merely spiritually pure, but like bodily, physically pure and clean. But the story in the Newsweek article that I think really resonated with people was, again, linked to the Hadith collection. And Muhammad was traveling with a Bedouin man, and the two of them were on camels, and they decide to both get off their camel. And the Bedouin man decides to not tie his camel to a object that would hold the camel. And Muhammad, you can imagine, kind of looks at this man and says, aren't you going to tie your camel? It might run away. And the Bedouin man, you can imagine him wanting to impress Muhammad, saying, oh, I place my faith in God. And Muhammad says, well, yeah, you always have to do that, but tie your camel first. Take care of the basic things, the rational things. You know, God has blessed us with rationality, with the ability to reason and to be practical and to kind of navigate challenges in society in a way that makes sense. So I think Muhammad's ultimate advice during a time of pandemic is a combination of like the worldly and the otherworldly, the practical and the spiritual. And I think ultimately this reminds us that he was a very well-balanced individual. He was someone that could operate in the realm of theology and religion, but he could also operate in the realm of kind of everyday happenings and events. So this is one of the reasons why I admire him.
Well, beautiful. Sorry if I might interrupt. Hope you can hear me now. Can you?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Can you? All right. Okay. Well, I mean, let me then just move on to the next questions easily, for my internet may just got interrupted. Well, one of the interesting things you point out in your book was the anti-racism of the Muhammad, peace be upon him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the book really overlapped with what happened with George Floyd last year. That was, I mean, we had racism in this country and throughout the world for a very long time, but George Floyd was something like on the very edge, and caused some awareness to a point which was never this much in history. So maybe Muhammad's role in our understanding the human nature. Maybe you might want to say a few words on that as well.
Sure. And Hakan, it was actually mind-boggling that a chapter in the book is called anti-racism, and then this coincided with this movement that was not only national but international. And it really almost startled me when mainstream media outlets started using the word anti-racism. It really struck me. And Muhammad had to be a non-racist, because as a prophet of God, God, the creator of everything and all of us, you had to be a believer in racial equality. God says in the Quran, we made you into nations and tribes so you can get to know one another. Like, this is one of the many theological passages that remind us of the inherent belief in racial equality in the Islamic tradition. But when we dig deeper into Muhammad's life and legacy, we know that he was bringing a message on race that was much more active than merely the non-racist idea. So to be a non-racist is someone that believes in the equality of the races, that you don't believe that one race is superior than the other, right? And again, I think any believer, any proper religious person, if I could say that, would be a non-racist, understanding that we're all human beings, we all have hearts and organs, and we all bleed the same, and so on and so forth. But Muhammad was really kind of pushing us, and by us I mean humanity, forward in the sense of kind of getting energetic with how we think about racial equality, really pushing us to not merely be a non-racist, but to be an anti-racist, right? To be an anti-racist, you have to first be a non-racist, but being a non-racist does not guarantee that you're going to be an anti-racist. An anti-racist is someone who puts in effort, energy. They use words. They use their ability to vote to combat the racism that is seen in society. So the difference between non-racism and anti-racism is really the energy that you put forth to tackle the racism. And Muhammad, there are so many examples, and we really just touched upon a handful of the popular ones in the book. But the relationship that he had fostered with Bilal ibn Rabah is really a key highlight in Muhammad's overall vision of society and his efforts in anti-racism. And we say in the book, of course, he freed Bilal. He stood up for Bilal when Bilal was being kind of harassed and teased for being black, for looking different. But I think the more I thought about Prophet Muhammad's vision for society and what it meant to be an anti-racist, it wasn't merely freeing Bilal and saying, okay, you're free now, you're free, so you're equal, right? He being Muhammad created an atmosphere and an environment that allowed Bilal to thrive and to reach his potential, which is really powerful. And I think it reminds us in America about some of the shortcomings that we had after the Civil War. So Lincoln frees the slaves, and a lot of Americans were like, okay, African Americans are free now. But there were things put in place to keep them boxed in and to keep them oppressed. So Muhammad didn't merely free Bilal. He said, look at the society I'm creating. This anti-racist society will enable someone like Bilal or anyone, despite their ethnicity, their race, or religion, to thrive. And I think those are some powerful messages. You know, people, even after George Floyd, they said, okay, that's the verdict. That's a good verdict. We wanted that verdict, but now what? Where is the energy going? Are we really dismantling some of the systems in place that keep people down? And Muhammad was really working to abolish those systems. And I think how could you not admire that? You don't have to be a Muslim to admire that by any stretch.
That's right. Another topic you cover in the book is on the rights of women. And I think it's a similar story to his approach to racism, that he did not only, okay, these are your rights, so enjoy it, but no, he really looked like he elevated the women to a status which was never the case in history. And it's also, to me, very unlikely to see a religious figure throughout the history to be uh, propagandists of the rights of women to this level. What would you say about that?
If Muhammad was here today, he would be probably a controversial figure because he would be advocating more rights for women, but not just rights. Like it's really linked to what I was just mentioning with Bilal. It's not about just giving people rights. It's about creating a environment, a society to allow people to thrive, to be themselves. And this isn't some kind of, I don't want it to come across as like a liberal kind of women can do whatever they want. I think it's more Muhammad recognizing that certain people have a God-given innate ability to contribute to society, and whether it's a man or a woman or whatever. And he wanted to tap into those unique gifts. And he wanted these people who were special to be elevated. And it's funny, Hakan, because I think one of the reasons why Muhammad was passionate about elevating women was because I think if we kind of take religion out of this and just look at society and what it means to be a kind of social creature in society, Muhammad was elevated by women in his life. And I hope that's not seen as a controversial point. When we look at someone like Khadijah, his first wife, someone who was impressive then in the 7th century and would be impressive now, basically a CEO of a major corporation or something like of this manner. And I think Muhammad's relationship with her greatly enriched Muhammad even before they eloped. And Muhammad was very grateful for her generosity, but it was deeper than that. It wasn't just like, oh, Khadijah is providing me resources and material gain. Khadijah was teaching Muhammad about things that are quite deep, about what it means to be a human, what it means to be an active member of society. And she was a blessing to him. God had sent Khadijah to Muhammad to teach him, or to not to teach him necessarily, but to mold him, to morph him, to make him who he would later be in 610, elevating to prophethood. So I think ultimately this one example with Khadijah really tells us who Muhammad was, especially in light of his relations with women. This was a person that he loved, but I think before the love came, admired for her skills, for her intellect, for her generosity. And if Muhammad was here today and he saw in women the skills that Khadija had, he would say to us men and also to everyone in society, we need to harness these skills that people have. We need to cherish these skills, and we need to allow people to be themselves so we can all benefit from these skills.
Well, you're absolutely right. The role of Hatija radiallahu anha was very crucial in the founding of his message. Leslie Hazelton actually describes the first revelation beautifully. And when she says, I mean, you know, this angel is coming, and the angel, you would associate it with a peaceful environment, right? And then you would feel like you're in heaven. But it was a very difficult condition for the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, when he encountered the angel. So he really thought, look, am I going nuts? What's going wrong with me? So when he went home, he really felt like he needed to be shrouded. He needed to be embraced. And so Hatija was there to help him rise up back on his feet to spread the message. For she knew he was the best of character for his community. So Hatija's role was very crucial, really. And well, I mean, you're a Christian, obviously, and you're saying it in all circumstances, and you proudly have the right to do so. But I'm sure, as somebody who wrote so much about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu you've received a lot of reactions, both from Muslims and from non-Muslims, and probably more so from your own folks. So how was that experience?
Well, it's challenging. It's changed a lot in recent years. I think when I first started being public with my research on social media and then in my articles and in my books, most Muslims were just like, wow, this is amazing. Here's a Christian speaking highly about it. And the Christian response at this point was largely like, this person is a heretic, and received a lot of abuse, I guess you would call it. For the most part, my mom always taught me, when you have these negative experiences or when people are using language that is not very kind, you let it go in one ear and it goes out the other, right? So it doesn't stick. So I never let it really get to me or bother me. Certainly not. You know, I'm a person of, I believe in the mission that I'm on, I suppose. So I haven't let it stop me. But in recent years, maybe the Christians have just given up on me, and they say he's a lost cause. Like we can't bring him back. But a lot of Muslims now are taking issue with my work, saying that I am presenting a picture of Muhammad that is like like secularized, toned down who he is, and that I'm trying to make it like overly peaceful. Or if I mention something like Waraka ibn Nafal has a place in heaven, people be like, oh, you're trying to teach Muslims that Christians can go to heaven or something like this. So, and then the other thing that has popped up is Muslims not really, the people who talk like this are the people who really don't know me, of course, right? Like who've never had human interaction, never spent a day with me and seen the kind of person I am. But people are starting to question my intention and not understanding why I haven't converted. And Hakan, I'll give you a example. I'm not going to drop any names, but there was a very influential figure within the U.S. Muslim community who most people would be familiar with. And I shared a Zoom session with, and the person started questioning my intention. Like, I don't understand how you can do all this and not be Muslim. I don't get it. And started bringing up things like, who do you work for? Who's paying you? And all of these things. So the negativity comes from multiple angles, but it's shifted, and I'm just being honest here. It's shifted in recent years, and it's coming from Muslims now who think that I'm a perennialist, who I'm trying to water down Islam, which is just not true and not the case at all. And then, yeah, questioning my intention, which again, that I think bothers me more than any academic critique. Like, I can, the academic critique is what it is. People want to debate the hadith or whatever. But when you have these people who've never met me in my life, they just see like a post, and then they start saying, well, you must be working for this or this or this. I mean, that is unfair. That's not fair. And that's unfortunate. So it's a struggle, but as I said, like, I'm passionate about what I write about and what I speak about. And I love what I share, and I mean what I share. Sometimes it's taken out of context and misinterpreted, but that's part of the business, I guess, is what you would call it. So it's a rough journey. It's a rough journey, I'd say.
I know. Well, we believe me, you're not only yourself in this journey. Many of us. I mean, I'm a Turkish originally, back home in Turkey. When the person I've been inspired by, Fethullah Gulen, and very important Islamic scholar, when he had started back in early 90s, this interfaith dialogue initiative in Turkey. Many, not many, but a lot of Muslim groups came up with a lot of conspiracy theories, as if he's a secret cardinal, as if
That's a good
we
one.
were working for CIA, but to soften Islam,
Yeah.
to make it a more moderate, so you get used to it in a certain way, but uh, a very famous hadith of Prophet Muhammad SAW says, the greatest tribulations come to prophets and those who follow them and those who follow them. So when you really are on a prophetic journey, you really need to get prepared for such criticism, although it sounds unfair. And I'm sure you would know a lot about how Prophet himself, although so much trusted and loved by his own family and clan in Mecca, how he had to be chased out of his town.
Mhm.
So that's a part of our destiny, I believe.
Yeah. I mean, and Jesus also had very, similar trials and tribulations. His hometown wanting to get rid of him. I mean, his own people working in cahoots with other foreign powers, basically saying this has to end. And but I'm human, and I've always been someone who's emotional. So to say that it doesn't bother me, I'd be lying. But to say that it impacts how I create, it doesn't. I'm still going to create. I'm still going to share what I believe, right? So people can get in your head, but do you let it bother you? That's the question. And I don't let it bother me.
Well, I mean, that's absolutely right, the right way to move on. I used to listen to Krista Tippett, and I really regret I don't have time to do it anymore. But it's her beautiful show on Being. Maybe you're familiar with that.
Yeah, yeah.
He always starts with the question, and I love that with her interviewees. uh, about the earliest memories of faith in
Ah,
the interviewee's childhood. So, as I believe you're so much into Prophet Muhammad and you're a practicing Catholic, you probably have such a history back in your childhood of faith. Like, for instance, in my case, I was born in Istanbul, which is in a way the heart of the one of the hearts, let me put it that way, of Islamic civilization. So, in Fatih area, we're surrounded by mosques. So when it's time for prayer, and I'm sure you heard the call to prayer in other cities of Islam. You kind of feel that sound resonates in your soul. So when I, rewind my memory, that minaret comes to my mind, and the sound of the imam comes to my mind. So, what was your memory of your childhood uh, from Massachusetts, maybe
wow.
somewhere
That's a
else?
that's a great question. And there's three that stick out. One was when I was 4 or 5, and I remember being at the St. Anthony's Feast in the North End of Boston. My Nana, Angie, Angelina Alonso, she was born and raised there. Her parents were from Sora and Monticellione in southern Italy. And I remember them carrying the statue down Prince Street, and just kind of, you know, it's a festival. It's a party, if you could put it that way. And I remember glimpses. I remember glimpses of that. I also remember from a very young age, and this was not just one moment. This is a continuation of multiple moments of my Nana sitting on her rocking chair saying the rosary. And I used to sit right next to her on the ground eating pasta or whatever it is. And I used to turn to her and I would say, Nana, and I would try to talk to her and she wouldn't talk to me because she was doing the rosary. And I remember that quite well. And I also remember my first communion. And my papa, Joseph Tedesco, also, of course, Italian. His parents also were from the North End. And him guiding me through what to expect on the day of my first Holy Communion. So I think first Holy Communion is I was in first or second grade. So those are three that stick out. However, the most powerful moments I've had as a person of faith happened in Ireland. Some moments that I really have a hard time explaining to people because they were so powerful, so inexplicable, things that I really can't explain. And there is something about Ireland that many people attest to, that it literally has some type of energy and power that is very like challenging, but also very enriching. I really refound my faith, reconnected to my faith when I was in Ireland. And it happened at a very low point in my life where I kind of made a pact with God, saying I'll never veer away again. And let me kind of backtrack here. Like, grew up Catholic, but the Catholicism in my family waned across a generation. So my Nana, very Catholic. My mother, Catholic, went to Catholic school, pretty Catholic, but less so. And then with me growing up, it was even less so. And even when I started studying Islam in college, I was Catholic, but when people asked me what my faith was, I was like, Catholic. It wasn't until I got to Ireland that I had some of these moments that reconnected me with God. And I said on this one occasion that I will never, ever veer away again. I will never disconnect. So it was very, very very powerful. I mean, I can almost, inexplicable things happening where, I'll give you one example. Again, at a low point in my life, I'll spare the details. And I just walked out of my house on Earl Street South. And I was thinking to myself, like, I need to go to mass. I need to change. Like, I need to get back to this path. And right as I was thinking about this, Hakan, I swear to God, the street lamp above me blew up. The street light just exploded above me. And I said, that's a message. There's no doubt that was a message to me. I mean, even my hair is standing up on my arms when I share this. And then, yeah, I reconnected. I rededicated myself to my faith, and I thank God for being flexible with me, for not giving up on me and saying, hey, he was basically like, hey, you want back in? And I was like, yes, I want back in. And he opened the door and he said, come on. So I'm thankful, very thankful.
Well, that's a prayer, beautiful prayer. We should hope that God doesn't allow us to steer on our way, but remain on His straight path, which is not an easy path sometimes. But at heart, when you're on the right path, it's such a comforting thing too. And this brings me to another discussion. I really would like to go in for. Last year, we ran an essay contest, and we'll be announcing the winners in a couple of days with the Fountain magazine. And this was probably, asking people about their experience in 2020 with COVID, how the challenge was, what they hoped to come true for their lives, and what their dreams were, how they really stood up under the challenge. And one of the essays I just read yesterday was about this woman who was going into a trauma in a way, and she chose to work in 2 different jobs to basically not think about life. So at night she was in a place, during the day she was in another place, so that she doesn't think about life, but basically just forget about it through work. And of course, with COVID, first time in her life, she's without a job. And she's now with this challenge of facing or encountering herself and her thoughts and about the things that are happening around the world. And I believe we how aware we are or how unaware we are about this situation, but I believe millions of people are actually going through such a challenge in their lives, and they even hopefully we're now going back to our works and back to normal, but we will see people going back to the same routine of working so that they don't think. So where do our religious traditions really uh, uh, play a role in such a cultural depression, if I may put it that way, where people are like in a rat race and not really sit down and consider about who they really are?
That's a really deep question, and it's certainly not a question that I think has one answer. Makes me think about some family members that I have who are, or what they seem to be, stuck in this cycle of just getting up, getting in this rhythm of like going to your job, um, you know, not developing any hobbies, just kind of stuck in the same old routine. Now, with religious traditions, I think I'm going to speak as a Catholic, but I'm going to speak from my own perspective and less so from like a Catholic theology. My understanding of God is love. God is wanting human beings to be happy and to enjoy themselves. And I think when people get caught up in the mundane rhythm of life, of work, of jobs, of bills, it's really not fulfilling God's plan for us. God, I think, wants us to enjoy life. God wants us to be happy. God wants us to have relationships. I mean, these are life's blessings. You know, God has given us the ability to love, to laugh, to have that feeling inside you that is, it's a feeling of it's an ecstatic feeling. It's pure joy. So I think, you know, if I had to give advice to someone who was going through this kind of robot lifestyle, this is not, this is part of life. It's important to get into a rhythm and take care of your things, but you know, God has given you a smile, the ability to laugh, to and to live, and you're essentially wasting that. You know, like you're wasting that gift that God has given you. And I'll also say that I think one of the reasons why people get comfortable in this kind of routine is largely out of their own fear of doing something different, fear of a challenge. And this, I think, is a big problem, because I know personally the most growth that I have had in my life always comes after messing up or having a significant challenge in life, right? So when we kind of get out there and when we live our life, we experience joy, love, and these ecstatic things, but we also may slip up and we also may be challenged. But God does not forget us. You know, he's saying, okay, this is the new hand of cards that I'm giving you, but this is the challenge. Stick with it. I'm going to test you, but you'll come out better for it. So the advice for these folks: live your life and don't be fearful of fear. Don't be afraid to do something different, to get outside of your comfort zone. Have faith. Have faith in God. Have faith in the gifts that he's given you. That would be my, again, I didn't even mention anything with kind of Catholicism, though I think my answer is naturally steeped in, you know, the values that my parents gave me and the church gave me as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a question from several questions actually from the audience. But one of them is in a way related to this topic that we're talking about. Does the research you made on Islam make you feel any closer to God?
Oh, definitely. Oh man, absolutely. Before I reconnected with the faith that I was born into, Islam brought me back to God. It got me thinking about God again. And it got me back on the path. And then I think when I was on that path, it was kind of like a reconnection with Catholicism. But there's no doubt that studying Islam, exploring Islam, engaging with Muslims has made me not merely a better Christian, but a better person. You know, when I'm able to see the principles and the values that I was raised with in the church, when I'm able to see that in another faith, that really gets me thinking about how big God is and what is God's ultimate plan and challenge for us. And again, I'll go back to that verse in the Quran: we've made you into nations and tribes so you can get to know one another. You know, that's a challenge. Diversity is a challenge, all linked to God, this diversity, but kind of reminding us that, hey, we're going to be different. we can see eye to eye on things, but we're still going to be different. So yeah, no doubt it has enriched, it has brought me closer to God, and it's also made me a more critical Christian. Seeing some of the Islamic literature, especially in the early years of Islam, some views on the Trinity and Christology really got me thinking about the evolution of a figure like Jesus and a theological concept like the Trinity. So it's made me a more critical Christian, but a more knowledgeable Christian. Reading the Quranic perspective on Jesus and the Trinity made me go back into Christian history and say, wait, how did we get here? What were the moments in time that Jesus became who he was according to the Bible? And what is the Quran saying about these perceptions? So it's made me more critical, but in a good way, not like a negative way, just knowledge.
Yeah, well, I think we're all learning a lot about our different traditions, and they're all enriching us, and this is why we should be thankful to the interfaith community. And when I thought about the question about your earliest memories of faith, I dug a bit more of my own memory, and my mom's standing for prayer actually stood out. She was like a reborn Muslim after she was like 35 or 40. And she would wake up early in the morning, almost at dawn. And from our little home in Istanbul, there was this light coming from the bathroom. While everyone was sleeping, she was standing in prayer. And I thought like she was like Mary to me. I said, this is the Mary, Jesus was born into. So in that way, you see, I mean, as we learn from our traditions, we're probably more enriched in coming closer to the divine. So, well, we're almost 1 hour now, but let me ask one final thing. As you remember, we discussed about the cover design. We had some beautiful discussions, and maybe you want to share how you felt about the design, what it means to you, what it means to the title.
I think there was a consensus when Hakan, you had sent me that. It was immediately, I was like, that's the one. And I think a few words just came to mind when I saw it. And one was beauty. It's a beautiful, colorful picture. And this beautiful, colorful kind of image is the image that has developed inside of my brain and my heart when I think about not only Muhammad, but also the Islamic tradition and also the Muslims that I've been so grateful to have befriended over the years. When we see media images of Islam, we know that it's not good, and it's the opposite of beautiful and colorful. It's dark and it's gloomy and it's violent. All of these things just never made sense to me based on my real world lived experience. So it made sense to me, but it's also about if you look at the cover, it's a blending. It's a mixing of peoples, perhaps cultures, ethnicities, even different religious traditions, all blending into a new and fresh idea that became what we understand to be as Islam. So it's a kind of, the picture is all encompassing. It's something that allows for blending, and it's also quite vivid. So these are some of the things that stuck out to me in selecting this beautiful cover, which many people have mentioned. Where did you get it? How did you settle on it? but it's, you know, it goes back to the humanity of it. It's beauty, color, mixing, blending. It's fluid. It's something that brings a smile to your face. And I think these are things that should be cherished. And we certainly need these things in our life. The positive kind of glass half full type mentality that our world desperately needs. There's a lot of just negativity, and it's just not healthy.
It's not. Well, thank you very much, Craig. It was a wonderful conversation. It's already 1 hour. So, Adam, is there any comment or question from the floor who, if you want to share, or is there any announcement you want to make?
Yes, well, I think that's it. It's about an hour now. Well, I would like to thank to Craig for joining us today and for this great talk. And it was great to host you as well, Hakan, for being the moderator today. And I would like to thank to all our guests today for taking the time and joining us today. And we are impatiently looking forward to host you once again in the future event, Craig. And it was a great program. Thank you for taking the time again from your busy schedule. I know that you have been very busy, very active on this new book. And well, hopefully we're going to see you in in-person setting in the
That would
near
be great.
future. Yes.
That
So,
would
and
be
I would like to,
awesome.
yes. Well, yeah, I would like to thank to everyone and looking forward to see everyone in our new future events. Please subscribe our channel and follow us on our social media accounts on Peace Islands Institute, New Jersey. So thank you again. Have a great night. Looking forward to see you. Bye.
God bless all. Thank you.
Bye.